Hello and welcome to, well, not quite a review of Reigns for PC, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. What you're seeing here is the PC version. This video is coming to you courtesy of Grotnot. He sent me this. Thank you, it is greatly appreciated. This is a binary choice game developed by Neural and published by Devolver Digital in August of this year, and it's a fairly interesting concept. The idea is that you play as a king who is having to make decisions, whether it's benevolent or malevolent or whatever it may well be, in order to facilitate the endurance of their kingdom. The mechanics for doing so are what make it interesting because it's just a binary choice every single time. You're either swiping left or swiping right, or in the case of PC, Mac, and Linux, clicking left or clicking right. So let's go ahead and delve into this thing and find out exactly how it works and why exactly this is not quite a review rather than a full-on review. Now, as far as visuals go, this game is very sparse. It's all 2D, and everything takes place in the form of cards and a bunch of fairly rudimentary animations. It's all a bunch of flat-shaded 2D art that is going for a rather specific art style, but that may or may not be your cup of tea, and you can just tell that by looking right at it. It is, however, fairly colorful, which is definitely appreciated, and the interface itself is easy to work with for the most part. There are a few oddities here and there, mostly with regards to not telling you anything about how the game actually works, which I'll talk to more when I get to the story and the gameplay part of this, but until then, just know that the interface is clean and easy to work with. It's just that it doesn't really tell you enough about the actual mechanics. Then of course there's the sound design, which consists entirely of music and sound effects, and the music is alright. It's fitting for the theme. There's sort of choral arrangement going on, but it isn't really anything memorable, and after a while it actually gets rather tiring. Then of course there's the sound effects, which consists of tones whenever you make a selection for the cards, and the battle sound effects for when you're dueling things, and occasionally the sounds it plays when you die or you get an ending. And about the best thing I can say about them is they function. They work for what they're trying to do, which is just have sound effects for those particular events, and they really don't do anything more than that. So overall the presentation is pretty lackluster, but then again you do have to keep in mind that this is actually a mobile game that ended up getting effectively ported to PC and Mac and Linux. And you can definitely see where it would fit in better on a mobile device. Now, of course, what really matter here are story and gameplay, and the story in this is that you are a dynasty of rulers, and you're basically trying to extend your reign as long as you possibly can. That's pretty much it, really. There is an overarching storyline, but I don't really want to spoil that for you if you actually are interested in it. Just know that it does take a fairly weird supernatural turn at one particular point, and suddenly everything starts to make a bit more sense. But even then, what you're doing moment to moment never really changes. You're just selecting one of two options presented to you. Either you swipe left or you swipe right, or in the case of PC, Mac, and Linux, click left or click right. That's it. The game is literally nothing more than a series of binary choices that you can make that will lead to different outcomes. You'll notice a few meters at the top of the screen, and those represent your favor or rating with the church, the people, the army, and your monetary situation. And basically what you're trying to do there is to maintain a balance between all of those things, to make sure that none of them either fill up or bottom out. Because either way, you die. I'm not joking. You fill up the meter, you die. You let the meter run out, you die. It just changes the way you die. The thing is, unless you're granted the clarity bonus, then you're not going to know exactly how much one is raising or lowering at any given point. You just have a very vague indication represented by a couple of dots on each of the various meters. And about the best idea you have there with regards to those particular dots is this will have a lesser effect or this will have a greater effect, and that's pretty much it. Along the way you will run into a series of bonuses that actually are persistent, although they're not permanent. So those will actually show up in the 4 slots at the bottom of the screen. Now some of those will just prevent certain bad events from happening, others will give you a monetary trickle or any number of things like that. So you're basically trying to both maintain the balance between all 4 of the meters as well as get access to these various special items that will assist you in maintaining those meters. Now they do try to spice up the simple binary choices by giving you things like a dungeon to explore or being able to actually engage in combat with the binary choice system. So while it's not like it's a completely different mechanical system, it does add some slight complexity on top of what you're already doing, and it's completely convoluted and makes no sense. The best I can tell, you're trying to knock your opponent off of the edge, so there are a series of dots that you are fighting at, for lack of a better term, and when you get to the edges of each side, then you can actually knock the enemy off and you win the duel. And of course, if the enemy knocks you off the edge, then you lose the duel and you probably die, unless you're just doing the sword fighting lessons with the one particular NPC, in which case you'll just lose some money instead. He gives you a few pointers, but they're really not all that useful, and mostly I just ended up winging it when I was in the middle of a duel, and it was just supremely frustrating trying to figure out exactly what the game was really wanting me to do with it. You do learn new moves as you progress through the game, but it doesn't explain what any of those moves do. You just have to figure it out on your own. In fact, you have to figure out almost everything in this game on your own. It does an absolutely terrible job of explaining its underlying mechanics and just the general goals to the player. I guess it's a good thing then that the gameplay mechanics are just so incredibly simplistic, because that just narrows it down to a 50-50 decision. The problem with that is that you will often fail and you'll just sit there and be like, wait, what did I do? How did I lose? And the game doesn't really have any feedback for you. It's just a bunch of trial and error and not much else. And therein really lies the game's problem. It doesn't really convey enough information to the player to make really informed decisions. You're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants the entire time, and it ends up being an incredibly frustrating experience at times as a result. This means that the people who are really going to be able to get the most out of this are people who like a lot of low interactivity in their games and don't really mind a game that is deliberately obscure as well as incredibly frustrating at times, through no fault of the player's own. Which of course means that this is an extremely niche game when you really get down to it. It's actually legitimately surprising to me that it has run into such fairly wide success. I could see it working a lot better on mobile because the control scheme really does scream mobile, but at the same time, the premise itself is really what ultimately carries this thing. It's not actually the gameplay or even just the writing of the game in general. And the problem with that is that unless you're able to put up with the gameplay, that premise is going to wear thin very, very quickly. In fact, I was pretty tired of playing this thing after the first about 20 minutes or so that I put into the game. While I was still getting new events and new deaths, I really did feel like I had just seen pretty much everything the game had to offer at that point. And really all you're going to be running into later on down the line is different deaths, maybe some different events that come along, but mostly you're seeing a lot of repeats. And that gets old pretty quick. Now the thing is that I can see the appeal of this, but while I can see where people would be able to get enjoyment out of it, I don't really get any enjoyment out of it myself past the first few minutes that I played, where I was like, hey, the premise is cool and this is a different mechanic, and then that wore off and I realized just how incredibly tedious the game actually is. But this is definitely a game where your mileage may vary. For what it is, it's fairly well made. I mean, they could have done more with the choice and consequence system, they could have done more with actual choices that are available to you, and could definitely do with a fair few more events, because what are in the game already are actually fairly limited, and you will run into repeats a lot as a result. But if that sounds like something that might be up your alley, you might want to give it a shot. I mean, the asking price is $3, so it's not like you're going for something that's wildly expensive or anything like that. It is pretty much a mobile game priced at a mobile game price. And for what it is, which is clearly intended to be a mobile game, it actually works fairly well. I could see being able to play this while you're just out and about on your phone messing around, or on your tablet messing around, and you just have some time to kill. But for more serious play sessions, it's really not going to hold its luster for very long. And that's entirely because those mechanics are just so incredibly simplistic, but also oddly obscure. Because, let's face it, the game really not telling you much of anything about how to play it or how anything works is definitely not a good thing. At least if you're wanting to play this from a more management standpoint. If you're wanting to play it more for a choice aspect, then not really having all that much information is actually fairly advantageous. But that means that it's really not a game for everyone. If it looks like something that might be up your alley, I will have a link in the video description box where you can pick this up if you're interested. But for everyone else, it's not really something I can heartily recommend. If there was a demo available, I'd say try that, but there currently is not a demo available, so there's no way to try it except for just going all out on it. So about the best recommendation I can give it is to just see for yourself if it looks like something you'd be interested in, and then try it if that looks like it's right up your alley. If it doesn't look like it's up your alley and the description that I just gave you fits that as well, then I would say you can skip this without any real problems. I will of course have a link in the video description box to where you can pick this up if you are interested. Thanks for watching.